When I looked down from the top of the mountain where I stood, I was both astounded and gratified. I was looking at an incredible sight that I could hardly believe I could see. I was looking down at Lake Louise from the top of a mountain that I had just climbed with some folks that I was with. It was an amazing experience. The person leading the expedition was a very experienced technical climber. Now, this mountain did not require gear, although the person leading it was very experienced with mountain climbing gear and had lots and had done a bunch of rock climbing. But the climb was steep and difficult, nonetheless. And it was extremely challenging. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a picture here. This picture right here, I was going to get it full screen, but I didn't. I was up on top of this mountain here, the one to the left overlooking Lake Louise. And I was surprised at the beauty. Now, Lake Louise is a gorgeous lake. It's a glacial lake at the end of a glacier that has been receding, and of course it's one of the subjects of the visitor center, and it's a special lake because it has a particular color. It's very, very green because of some natural minerals that occur, and I took the tour and looked at all that stuff. But the key here was the climb. I stood at the top of that mountain, and the climb was several hours and a long, long, long way up. But you know what? I stood there completely exhausted, knowing that I probably wouldn't be able to walk for a couple of days, although the worst hadn't happened yet, because the actual terrifying part was the descent. The descent required different muscles that got tired faster than I was used to, and so the descent turned out to be very difficult, and those were the muscles that were the most tired the next day. But you know, standing on top of the mountain after several hours of exertion was a reward in itself, because I could look down on that valley that you just saw, and the hotel I was staying at was the Lake Louise. It's one of the Fairmont hotels, one of the old railroad hotels. And if you've never been in one of those, either in Banff or Lake Louise in Alberta, they're amazing. I mean, they're just amazing. They have tunnels, they have secret lounge areas, and what I mean by that is with big fireplaces and stuff that are like buried inside. You can actually get lost. They're 10 or 12 stories high, and they're like a castle. They're kind of like a castle. So that's where I was staying, only at the one in Lake Louise. And the reward for that tremendous effort at the top of the climb was the view. And it gives you a different view of yourself, of the world, and clearly powers the feeling that that effort was just worth it. The sweat, the pain, forcing yourself to go on. Don't stop, don't sit down more than a couple minutes. Keep going to get to the top of that mountain. The point of the story is to inspire in you a feeling that effort, whatever the cost, the effort to a noble and worthwhile goal is worth it. Putting in the effort that it takes to accomplish what you want to is worth it. We get discouraged. We have to sit and rest for a minute or two or five, refuel, you know, eating little bars on the way up and all that sort of thing for the several-hour climb. But it was worth it. The reward in the view at the top was powerful and like nothing else I'd seen. So I came away inspired, and I was right. I couldn't walk for a couple days after the descent, which, like I said, was more difficult than the ascent. But I came away humbled, wiser, and empowered because of the effort that I'd put in. Okay, now that's the end of the story. Today's Hangout is part 3 of the Personal Story Hangout. I've started each of these with a different story, and I've done it for a reason. Today, the things I promised we'd talk about is the fundamentals of good storytelling, 3 keys to holding attention, and 3 secrets to influence behavior. Now, the fundamentals of good storytelling occur naturally in all of us a little bit, and some people a lot. But the problem is this: when we don't think we're telling a story, when we're just talking to somebody, then we fall into a natural rhythm, and we can, have a conversation, or we can just tell a monologue, a story about something that's fun and interesting. But when I got to mute. There you go. When we tell a story naturally, when we're just telling somebody something that happened, we are spontaneous when we become unself-conscious and we just talk and we tell the story because we don't feel like we're on display. Storytelling as it relates to marketing, and of course this is the Speed to Profit Marketing Hangout, storytelling as it relates to marketing means you are on display. You are intentionally on display, and you're trying to create a certain mystique. You're trying to create some attention, and you're trying to do what I described, which you're holding attention and influence behavior. So we're going to talk about those a little bit. So this is part 3 of storytelling. There's gold in your story. The 3 pieces of storytelling we did first was discover, develop, and today is about delivery. Today is about the delivery of story. And when I told you the story about the hike up Lake Louise, and I told a very abbreviated version because this is a 30-minute hangout, we have lots to cover. But the purpose of the storytelling was to teach you about the power of story, was to get you to envision perhaps something that you had done that was difficult, maybe on a mountain, maybe somewhere else. But to get you to participate emotionally in both the story, the view, the reward, and the feeling of accomplishment. Okay, and I've used that story and other stories many times in both in captivating audiences, in motivating clients and audiences, and in selling and in business. And so that's the reason we're spending 3 entire hangouts talking about the power of story, why they're important, and why it's a critical feature for you to learn to do in your marketing. And it is a fundamental part of the Speed to Profit marketing. It's interesting because every event, without exception, every event that I've been to in the last 6 months features not one, but at least 2 keynote speakers that talk about personal story. They talk about not only the power of it, but the essential nature of it being a key feature of marketing. So I'm glad they're catching up. I've been talking about personal story, and I've been using it for a decade, 2 decades. I have been talking about it and teaching it for 3 years. We're now there, and everyone is catching up, and that is fantastic. I don't feel anything except I'm grateful for that, because what it will do is it will unleash an entirely new layer of power in people's marketing and their ability to serve others. So let's, a couple of real quick announcements about the Speed to Profit Marketing Club group that any of you that are watching either now or later are part of, and that is this. There is a Speed to Profit Marketing public G+ group. Join it. It is with a numeral 2. Speed, numeral 2, Profit Marketing. Please join that group. Ask to join. You can come in. It's a public group. We'll be posting some cool stuff in there. These hangouts will be in there. I should have started the hangout in that group today, and I didn't. So I will put it in there. It's going to be there. And we're going to have some lively and good discussion. I'm creating that community, so it's empty now, but I want to encourage you to join it. There is another Speed to Profit Marketing with the word TO, Speed to Profit Marketing TO. That's a private group. That is a coaching group where once a week I meet for an hour hangout to teach Speed to Profit Marketing principles to all those that belong to that group coaching. If you're interested in that, go to www.speedtoprofitmarketing.com/group coaching. www.speedtoprofitmarketing.com/group coaching. It's the URL on the page. So go there, and we can talk about getting into the group if that seems appropriate for where you are. Other people in the group are my private coaching clients who have been to the events and so forth. So that's a really interesting group to belong to as well. 2 different groups, one with the numeral 2, that's public, one with the letters TO. So that's one thing. One other announcement, and that is the next Speed to Profit Marketing Intensive is in September 15, 16, and 17 at the Desert Retreat in Phoenix. September 15, 16, and 17, Desert Retreat in Phoenix, the next Speed to Profit Marketing Intensive. That will be the 3rd one this year, and this is going to be the best that we've had so far. I've got some fantastic guests lined up, and we're going to cover some new material. So those that have been to the other ones, it will be new material, and it will be rocking. So anyway, that's all of the announcements. Back to story. Okay, the first thing I said we'd cover is the fundamentals of good storytelling. The fundamentals of good storytelling is you have to have something interesting to say. If I'm going to tell a story about electricity, that's really boring. I've told many stories about electricity and used them and sold products and kept a lot of attention. How did I do it? Well, I created something interesting in it. So I'll give you an example. I was testifying before the California Senate. being grilled because of the power outages that happened in 2001, 10 or 12 years ago. The story that I told was of a senator who asked me, in the midst of this horrible case of market manipulation, greed, and people going to jail and fraud and tens of billions of dollars and gigantic bankruptcies and all this stuff. It was, one of the major news stories in the United States and the world at the time. She asked me if electrons generated by nuclear power plants were radioactive. And I didn't know what to say. I tried really hard not to laugh, and I told her that was like asking if electrons generated by hydroelectric facilities were wet. And of course, I maintained my composure. The audience, the gallery, just exploded in laughter, of course. And this was under oath and testimony before the Senate, and I got away with it, whatever. But I have told that story about electricity. My point is, if you create human connection, if you create emotions people can relate to, if you create feelings that can be shared, you can tell a story about anything. So that's one of the fundamentals. The second fundamental is learn to use your voice, learn to use your face, and learn to use your gestures. In other words, tell a story. It's a dramatic event. So have something interesting to say, learn to use those things, and this 30-minute time is not a coaching session about that, but that certainly is one of the things I do, because I've been an acting coach and worked with beginners and Grammy winners for many years as well. So those are two of the key fundamentals of good storytelling. I tell them quickly now because we're in a compressed time frame, but if you take those and figure out how to apply them to stories you might tell, and spend some time figuring out how to make them interesting, and then practice, you'll increase your ability. You'll be at one step further than you are now. You will not jump immediately to where I am or to other master storytellers, but you will move in the right direction. And I can promise you one thing: if you don't practice, you'll stay where you are. So there's your choices. The next thing is discover 3 keys to holding attention. So I'll tell you the 3 keys to holding attention. The first one, and they overlap a little bit with the fundamentals of good storytelling, but the first one is to believe that you have something worth sharing. If you are afraid that you don't have something worth sharing, and that fear comes through in your storytelling, then people lose interest because it feels inauthentic, it feels fake, or it feels unimportant. So if you truly have passion and belief around the importance or value of the story that you're telling, that is the first key to holding attention. And the second key to holding attention is use good storytelling techniques, which we talked about a couple of them there. But some good storytelling techniques have actually nothing to do with the storyteller. It has to do with reading the audience. It has to do with your timing of the story. If someone's in a huge hurry or distracted or busy with something else, that's not the time to tell a story. So holding attention has as much to do with the audience, reading the audience and understanding where they are and what they need, as it does with the storyteller. Okay, so the first piece is interesting belief that you have something powerful and useful, helpful to the story listener to share. And the second one is know your audience, time your audience, okay, so that you can actually use that to your advantage. And if it's not time to tell a story, don't, because people aren't listening, and at worst case you'll be annoying, okay, and then you'll find yourself on the negative receiving end of attention. And the third key to holding attention is don't talk too long. Modulate your story with space, particularly if it's an emotional story and evokes feeling either glorious and powerful, like view from the top of that mountain peak I showed you, or sad and painful. Space is required for the processing of emotion. And there's nothing like a space. If you're talking, nobody will listen. You lose them. On the other hand, if you tell a story and suddenly you pause, every eye in the room will move to you. Some will move because they want to know what's wrong. Some will move because of the pin drop pause, is what those are called, that you've created. And some will move because they're just with you already, because you've done a good job. So those are 3 keys to holding attention. Now I'm going to do the last part, which is 3 secrets to influence behavior. The first secret to influencing behavior with a story is know the desired behavior that you want. So this is true for any piece of marketing, whether you're marketing a message or you're marketing a product or service. Half my clients are messengers, half my clients are business people. Marketing a message is the same as marketing a service. You pull on different emotional triggers, but the process is the same. So the first thing you have to know is, what are the triggers? What are the needs and feelings of your audience, right? You have to know what moves them. If you don't know what moves them, you certainly can't influence your behavior. Second, you have to, so first, know your audience and know what moves them. Second is, you have to think about your story. You can't just tell an interesting story and then somehow tie it to something irrelevant. The story blueprint that's part of the mastermind, and that you can have actually if you go to www.speedtoprofitmarketing.com/story1, the URL on the screen. But the story blueprint gives you a process to go through for yourself to help you create a personal story. Now, one of the mistakes people make is they say, okay, I need a personal story, and they think they got to tell their whole life story. That's just not even remotely true, and it's not effective or helpful, and it's impossible to do anyway because nobody's going to listen to you that long. What you do is you create stories. Okay, one of the really, really effective speakers that I've heard speak is Bo Eason, who's an NFL player who's turned into one-man playwright and has done a very, very successful one-person show on Broadway for many years called Runt of the Litter. And I've seen him talk about it as a keynote speaker in a conference a couple of times, and I've also seen him deliver it as a performance. So I've watched him both as a performer and as a teacher talk about the process of creating and telling story. And so some of the things that I'm talking about come from that, some come from my own lengthy experience. But you have to understand that you're weaving a story. You're not telling your life story. You're weaving a story. Why? For the benefit of your audience. So step 1 is understand what the triggers are that they need. Step 2 is, how will the story that I'm going to tell relate to the needs of the audience that I have in part 1, right? How can I either explicitly or implicitly tie them? Now, some things are implicit. Some things that are deeply emotional can be implicitly tied. If you're doing marketing, the ties have to be more explicit, because people do not make the conclusions that you think they make. So, for example, if you have marketing stuff and you're trying to get people to move to take some action, to opt into something or to make a small purchase or a large purchase, assuming they know that that's what you want is never a good idea. If you're telling a tear-jerking story about needing to raise funds for, a certain cause, you may or may not have to be anywhere near as explicit because of the depth of emotion involved. There can be an implied contribution, another setup, and just a website shown and different things like that. So the level of explicit instruction depends on what you're actually doing. So know your audience, make sure that you have the tie. And the third piece of influencing behavior is to reinforce it in multiple ways. So there's all kinds of things like neuro-linguistic programming, implied or embedded commands. There's ways to directly ask for people to do things. One of the big failures of salespeople is to fail to ask for the sale. Okay? As part of this reinforcing, one of the huge keys there, and I've simplified this because there's a lot more than 3, but one of the huge keys in the reinforcing is to listen. Listen if the audience is not speaking because you are the speaker. If you're in a conversation, then listen to what they need and you can reflect and you can tune it in. If you're the speaker and you're just telling story, then how you listen is watching the audience. Read body language. See what they're telling. Are they looking away? Are they texting? Are they boring? Are they bored? Are they with you? Are they not with you? Do trial closes, get them to participate, raise hands, do things to read your audience and listen to what's going on so that you can reinforce your message. All right, so those are the pieces that I had intended to cover today, and do it quickly as to why story, there's gold in your story. So I'm going to bring it to conclusion now, because this is the third week of storytelling magic. So the first week we talked about a process to discover your own story, to look at the events in your own life that have shaped you, to figure out what they have done for you and how they shaped you into who you are, how you came to be the person you are, believe and do and act and stand for the things you stand for and stand against the things you stand against. And I say that because often it's as important to make it clear what you do not stand for, will not tolerate, as it is to be clear about what you stand for. So do those things and then figure out how to start to weave that into story. How did they shape you? What are these events? How did they shape you? And how might they relate to an audience? That was week one. That was about, I think, 3 weeks ago, because we skipped a week or two here. The second part was to develop a story. Developing a story is not an accident, and it doesn't happen on the spur of the moment. So if you want to develop a story that you're going to use either to market a message or market a product, you have to develop the story. You have to take the events of your life and weave them into a story. And you might have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 stories of different lengths, a 5-minute one, a 20-minute one, a 90-minute one, depending on the presentation space you have and the audience you might be addressing. But practicing weaving that into a story so that you remember it, so you can do it comfortably, so that you overcome your stage fright and the on-stageness that we talked about at the beginning that you don't have when you're talking to a friend. That's why people that tell you, they tell you when you're making videos, just imagine you're sitting in a coffee shop talking to a friend, because then you lose that self-conscious, oh my heck, what do I look like? What do I sound like? Am I going to say something stupid? You lose all that. And that's effective, essential, not effective. It's essential, because if you don't lose it, people are paying attention to poor you, and they want to pat you on the head, not buy your stuff. Okay, and that's not your intended outcome, but it will be the outcome if you're nervous, and they can see that. That was develop. So developing the story, we spent an entire hangout talking about a process to develop story and how to practice it and how to develop more than one story that you can use in different circumstances and with different avatars. The third one today is delivery, and the big elephant in the room here, folks, is practice. There is no substitute for practice. Standing in front of the mirror, memorizing scripts, doing it over and over again. You know, I have people tell me, well, I'm just, real good off the cuff. I just do that off the cuff. I don't need to practice. Nonsense. I'm really good off the cuff. I am really good and have improvised in high pressure, amazing situations like, testifying in front of banks of lawyers and having to do all kinds of crazy things where you couldn't really prepare except for with the depth of your own preparation. And I say that not because I'm saying, yay for me. I'm saying I'm really good off the cuff, and I still practice. I practice and I practice. And I do it because I want to deliver excellence. I am driven to do something valuable and good for my clients and for you watching this. So the first key to delivery is practice. Practice so that it's smooth. Practice so that it's slow. Practice so that you remember without thinking the points you want to emphasize. Practice so that when the feeling of nervousness comes on you, you don't forget everything and stand there like a goofball because you can't remember where you're at in your talk. Practice for all those reasons. Then, with that, intentionally hire a coach and get some good storytelling secrets. We've talked about them: gestures, vocal modulation, facial expressions, pauses, how to use volume, space, timing, humor. All of those things are essential. So that brings to the end of my summary. We've got 3 or 4 minutes left. We've got a couple people on. I see we've got Kristen's on and Christopher's on. Thank you guys for being my faithful joiners. I know that we have a whole bunch of people saying they're going to watch or watch later. I know that we're at the same time as Zara's midweek zap, and she said she'd watch later and so forth. But so that's the end of the three-part story series. Christopher or Kristen, do you have questions? I don't have Joy here wrangling. She's in San Diego to mastermind. So jump right in if you have anything to say.
I wanted to pull up a comment. Let's see if I can find it. It was by Roy Montero. He had a really interesting thing. Here we go. It's kind of a long one, so let me know if you can read it all. Let's see, it looks like it's only pulling up the second part, or the first part. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so he goes in to say let me see, more apt to cut you more slack when it comes to your personal quirks or idiosyncrasies if you get into like a hangout with them quickly. And he calls it BS, your backstory. And he's talking about how that's he really relates to it. And he actually teaches it as part of his own personal story as the speed relationship guy. So we got a like-minded person here.
Well, that's fantastic. Great to meet you, Roy, and I really appreciate your comment. We did I have about 20-something hours on speed to profit marketing that are on my YouTube channel, and I mentioned that because I think one of them was how to develop long-term relationships fast, and a bunch of the very similar things. So I'm really glad that you're doing that, really glad that you're part of it, and thank you for being here and watching this today, and I'd love to see some of your stuff, and I've got 25 or 30 hours of this particular topic among the hundreds of videos I have up. So great to have you, and thanks for the comment. Christopher, anything from you?
Kel, I used to teach doctors and their staffs all across the U.S. and Canada, and one of the things that I found that after going over material, that delivering the material was not nearly as significant as all the improvised, off-the-cuff stuff. In fact, I wish I had had recordings because often that was the most interesting stuff.
It is, and I'm glad you said that because I don't want what I said to be interpreted in any way that off the cuff is not effective. What I know for sure is that off the cuff is only good when you have deep preparation in your main stuff so that your off the cuff stuff is relevant, powerful, connected, and makes sense. So it is, totally agree with you, and I've had the same experience, but it comes from good preparation on your regular stuff so that your off the cuff stuff is like cool.
I've seen that true of elevator pitches also. That once you go over and over and over, you can have like 12 different elevator pitches.
And you can do it, it's exactly right, and you can do it in a way and integrate them together, and then they are all natural conversation, and they're not pitchy anymore. They're just you explaining in a really good way that you thought about a lot so that you said what you meant in a short space of time, and so they stop being pitches and they start being, that's really what I do, and I finally figured out how to say it right in a short period of time so that 10 minutes from now I don't think, oh, I should have said X, right?
Yeah, I do like the conversational approach, though. It seems very natural, and you may have a few keywords or some phrases that you like to use, and then you just weave them into the conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely, because nobody likes to be pitched or sold to or feel preached at or any of that kind of crap. So we all like to feel, like we're equals and we're meeting somebody that's interesting and they're as interested in us as we potentially could be in them and so forth. So absolutely.
I think the practice is kind of like the framing. So if you have a strong frame, then you can go from different directions. Sorry for that noise. You can go different directions, but you have that strong frame there, and that's why it's so essential to practice.
I like that word. So that's a great way to think about it. If you've got your topic or your topics or your ideas or whatever mastered, then I'm going to liken that to your strong frame, and I like that wording and explanation really well. And so you can touch things. When I talk about having a big tree and branches and you hang stuff on it, but a frame is a great way to think about it, and you can hang stuff on the frame, and you know the frame really well, and it's strong, and you're well grounded in it, so that all the pieces that you do come from a strong frame. I think it's a great way to look at it. Are there other questions or comments about storytelling today? Okay,
it looks like
great.
just a whole bunch of people are resonating with this, so that's fabulous, because I know it's really helped me in thinking about what I'm going to be doing. So I'm just so excited that so many people are here and they're just like getting excited about you too.
Good. Well, let me just say one final thing. So a bold prediction that I make about business is simply this. If you're not using video and telling your personal story about your business or your message this year now, with the tools that are available, your business is on the way out. You're going to lose market share. You're leaving money on the table if you're a business. So let me do it in two pieces. If you're a business and you're not on YouTube using good, powerful, short, effective marketing that includes your story and your personal connection, like Roy talked about, and your personal backstory, those kinds of things, your business is going to disappear. And the reason is because we want to know who we're doing business with. We want to have that connection. We want to touch people. And so that's essential. It's not optional. It's not a nice to have. It's essential, because there's going to be others of your competitors that are doing it, and people like that. I like it. You like it. We'll gravitate to those that do it. And that's one of the reasons I launched Speed to Profit Marketing last year, was I could see that developing, and I want to help businesses who are looking to grow their brand and their exposure and create that, elite positioning online through their story, to help them do that. The other half of this is messengers. So there's lots of people that perhaps are not necessarily in a business per se, but they have a cause or a message that they're trying to get support for. They're trying to gather an audience, find a voice, gather an audience, create a movement, get something moving forward. The same holds true for them. So whether or not there's money exchanged at the end, like you do in business, you're still trying to motivate people to action in either one. And video with good storytelling connects at an emotional level, and it is essential that you do it and that you start now. And if you don't know how to tell a good story or find it, get some help. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be buried by those that do, because there are many that are catching this one. Oh, I got to do this. And everybody is talking about it, the power, the essential nature of personal story, backstory, both in connection at the first stage and in moving through the process of creating a following, ultimately buying if that's the goal, if you're on business side, or ultimately motivating people to action if you're on the movement or message side. So it is resonating. It's resonating in a really big way in the global marketplace, and so true, especially as we reach across the world with the internet and know everybody on all around the world, and find out that the human experience and story has so many resonant points and things in common. So thank you, Kristen, for bringing that up. And for all of you that are watching, whether you're watching now or on YouTube, if I can help you in any way, if you'd like to find out more about Speed to Profit Marketing, which is also for messengers and business, two parts, get a hold of me. Look up group coaching, or coachkellenflukiger.com, or at gmail.com, excuse me, coachkellenflukiger@gmail.com is a way to get a hold of me if you'd like to as well. Or comments, just put a comment in the event and I'll get a hold of you if there's something that you'd like to discuss further. Anybody else? All right, thanks very much for coming. We've just gone slightly over our 30 minutes, but we're doing good with this 30-minute format. So our next hangout is Saturday. Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific time is Break the Cage, which is our breakthrough hangout to get your next week lined up with breakthrough results. We'll see you there.
Bye.